Okay, so a lot has happened since my last video on Qwen image edit, and this one, honestly, this one might blow your mind. At least I hope it does. There's been a lot of talk about Qwen online, but something I keep noticing is that most of the people reviewing the model don't really have the kind of control you can get when you're working inside ComfyUI, and that's something we're going to fix today. The workflow we're looking at now includes an improved version of Qwen image edit, and this one can edit up to 4 reference images at the same time. On top of that, I'll show you a workflow that gives you really fine, granular control over your edits, in case you don't want your whole image to change. And there's also a ControlNet workflow for both Qwen image and Qwen image edit. Yes, Qwen image actually has ControlNet. If you want to follow along, you can skip ahead to the model download and setup section first, and then come back to this part afterwards. Let's start with Qwen image. I want to create 4 images that I'll be using throughout the video. So before we get into the actual editing, I'll take you through each workflow. The Qwen image workflow itself hasn't really changed. What I've added is the resolution master node, which is amazing, and I've also added a ControlNet section. I was going to talk about ControlNet later, but since we're still at the image generation stage, why not now? So, the image generation workflow is made up of 6 groups. The first group is the resolution group, and that's where we see our first change. This node is much better than the Flux resolution calculator because it's not just built for Flux. You can manually adjust the resolution, or you can use presets by selecting the model you're working with, and then choosing the aspect ratio. That gives you the best settings for your output image, basically giving you a solid starting point that works straight away, but with the flexibility to tweak things further if you want. For example, I'm going to select Qwen image and a 16:9 aspect ratio. That instantly shows me a visual preview of the aspect ratio and also lists the resolution just below it. Let's say I'm running on a weak GPU. I can simply lower the megapixel count to 0.5 and then click on the camera icon. That gives me another visual preview, this time showing the new aspect ratio and resolution, with the updated megapixel count next to it. You can also set a target resolution directly. For this, I'll keep mine at 1080p and then click on the TV icon. That automatically updates the preview, the resolution, and the megapixel values for me. For the first image, I'm sticking with a 16:9 aspect ratio, but then I'll click the swap button to make it portrait. I'll also keep the resolution at 720p because that's going to be more than clear enough for the edits we're doing. Next is the normal load model group. Everything here is still the same, but please, and this is really important, if you're getting black images with the Qwen workflow, bypass Sage Attention. Just click Yes on the bypass Sage Attention switch. This is crucial because the error is persistent and a lot of people are running into it. You'll still get excellent speeds using the 4-step or 8-step LoRa's. After that, you've got the positive and negative prompt nodes, then the basic sampling group, and finally, the save group. We'll go deeper into the ControlNet group later. For now, the first character I want is a ninja, but I want her to be a woman. Here's the exact prompt I'm using. You can pause the video here if you want to read through it properly. I'm using the 4-step lightning LoRa for this, so I'm setting the steps to 4 and the CFG to 1. Make sure ControlNet is disabled if you're not using it. I'm not happy with how the arrow is placed in the first render, so let's increase the target resolution and run it again. I need the bow and arrow to work properly, so this time I'll use 8 steps with the 8-step LoRa. It's still really fast and the image is clean. Here are the other 3 images I generated with their prompts. Since we're here, let's test out ControlNet. At the moment, there are 3 ControlNets available in ComfyUI for Qwen image: the Canny ControlNet, the Depth ControlNet, and the InPaint ControlNet, at least for now. Qwen is constantly developing more, and if you look on Model Scope, you'll see things like the ControlNet Union and the Elegant model. And listen, the Elegant model is just incredible. It's a precise partition control model trained on Qwen image with a LoRa structure. It can control the position and shape of each object by combining text input with region-based conditions, basically masks. Imagine this. You've got a blank canvas, you paint different color masks for different regions, and then you describe each one in text. For example, moon, sailing boat, sea, cliff, a beautiful woman seated, and a pale blue long dress with a soft glow. It processes all of those regions together and generates a super detailed image. The results are stunning. I really want this model in Comfy. But back to what's actually available right now. We've got Canny, Depth, and InPaint. The Canny and Depth models are only for Qwen Image, but the InPaint ControlNet works for both Qwen Image and Qwen Edit. The InPaint model is the one that really interests me because it practically makes one of the existing workflows obsolete. But let's start with Canny. First, make sure the ControlNet models are downloaded and placed in your Models Model Patches folder inside ComfyUI. Then, restart ComfyUI so it can recognize them. After the restart, enable the ControlNet group. For this test, I'm going to use an image of a poodle swimming in a pool. I'll load the Canny model in the Model Path Loader node and then use the Canny Edge preprocessor. That's basically all the setup you need. I'll also lower the strength to 0.5. Make sure you select your output resolution, and here's the prompt I'm using. A 3D animated image of a poodle swimming in a pool with a huge shark with its mouth open chasing it. Poor dog. The result isn't as clear as I was hoping for, and the output isn't great. So here's the thing. We're only using 4 steps at the moment, which isn't really enough detail. Maybe increasing the strength will give us better results. Let's try again with this image, but this time I'll raise the strength to 0.7. The prompt I'm using is a beautiful, cybernetic, half-robotic woman standing in front of a bustling, futuristic city. The Canny Edge image looks a bit clearer now, and the generated output makes a bit more sense. The only strange thing is that it sees the woman's hands as some kind of fashion accessory around her neck. Now we're talking. Alibaba really showing off here, dropping a model and giving us control nets in the same week. Alright, next up is the depth model. I'm going to upload this image of a guy dunking. Then change the model over to the depth control net and select the depth anything preprocessor. My prompt is a high contrast anime style image of a beautiful anime character in swimwear dunking a basketball into a hoop. Sci-fi dystopian scenery. The basketball has fire trailing behind it, still keeping the dystopian theme running. Actually, sorry, I used the wrong preprocessor. The correct one is the Depth Anything V2 preprocessor. Now the depth map looks good. And just look at what we've got. Goosebumps. Really. This is the first time I'm testing this, so we're all seeing what it can do at the same time. Okay, so finally we've got the control net that's supposed to work for both. And if this works, it basically means it turns the Qwen image generation model into an image edit model. Let's test it. I'll use the same portrait of a woman without glasses, and this time I'm simply going to add glasses to see what happens. I'll right-click on the input image, choose Open in Mask Editor, mask over her eyes, and save it. Then I'll connect the InPaint preprocessor to the Qwen Image Diff Synth ControlNet node, along with the Preview Image node. And of course, I'll make sure the model itself is switched to the InPaint ControlNet. The prompt is, a woman with yellow and green sunglasses. I really hope this works. And again, I get an error. Completely my fault this time for not connecting the mask properly. Still, not a good result. I spent a few minutes messing around with the ComfyUI nodes, but I did find the solution. It's actually really simple. All I needed to do was connect the image output from the resize node into the input of the Qwen Image Diff Synth ControlNet node, and do the same with the mask. Let me just clear this up so it's crystal. When you're using the Canny or Depth ControlNet models, connect the processed image from the preprocessor into the Qwen Image Diff Synth ControlNet node. Do not connect the mask in this case. But if you're using the InPaint ControlNet, then connect both the image and the mask directly from the resize image node into the Qwen Image Diff Synth ControlNet node. That's the difference. Alright, let's cue it and see. Perfect InPaint. The only issue is that the image looks a little distorted, and that's because of the resolution node. So let's fix that. I'll add a Get Image Size node and connect it to the resize image node. That way, we can InPaint directly into Qwen Image. Now that I know it works, I can just attach it to the resolution master node and enable auto detect. What that does is, every time the ControlNet group is on, it will automatically detect the image size and send the same resolution to both the latent and the ControlNet. If you want to bypass this behavior, you can just click on the TV icon or the camera icon to go back to your default resolution when you're doing text to image without ControlNet. And if you do want the ControlNet image size, just click on Detect Image. That's it. Let's try again. Perfect. That took a bit longer than I was hoping, but it works. Next, let's look at Qwen Multi-Image Edit. I've changed this workflow so you can edit up to 4 images. And I've also included the in-paint fix we just created in the Qwen image workflow. This workflow is made up of 8 groups. The first is the resolution group. This is where you select your resolution. You can choose between the resolution master and the VAE encode, just like in Flux Context. I've made the resolution master the default node and the VAE secondary. The reason for that is because I usually get better results using the empty latent rather than the VAE encode. The VAE encode always uses the reference image size and crops the image even if you've got multiple images. So for this test, I'll change my preset to Qwen image. I'll choose landscape as the aspect ratio and make sure the target resolution is set to 1080p. Looks good. Now let's add the 4 images I generated earlier with Qwen image. I'll set the image switch to 4. The models are all the same, with the only difference being that this one uses the image edit model. I'll also make sure Sage Attention is bypassed, and, very important, that ControlNet is bypassed here too. I've written that in bold because it's crucial, and always make sure your steps match the LoRa's you're using. To start simple, I'll use an easy prompt, and then we'll try something more complex. The first prompt is, put the woman, the boy, and the dragon in the city. The woman is holding the boy's hand, and the dragon is sitting next to them. I'm not sure if this will work, but let's find out. And it works. But there are a few things slightly off. It retains too much from the original images. The truth is, I'm still not sure exactly how best to prompt for this. If the prompt is too complicated, it generates a completely new image. If it's too simple, it gives me what I asked for, but it also drags in unwanted details from the original reference images. So let's try adding an LLM and see if it can do better. I'll give it a simple prompt. I want the woman, the boy, and the dragon in the city. The dragon should be prancing happily. The woman should be crouching down looking at the boy, and the boy should be looking up at her. Here's the LLM prompt. You can pause here to read through it if you want. And it seems like it works. So in other words, treat Qwen multi-image edit the same way you'd treat Qwen image. Next, let's see if ControlNet works here. The canny and depth ControlNets don't work with the edit model. The only one that does is the in-paint model. So I'll activate the ControlNet group again and add the in-paint model. Now, take note, this works best when you're just working with the first image. So I'll set my switch back to 1. I'll leave the image of the woman and mask her. I've made a few necessary changes here. The VAE encode doesn't really make sense, at least not for editing. So what I did was replace the VAE encode with in-painting. That means you need to change the image size switch to 2. But here's a new problem. When I cue the workflow with the prompt, a woman with a bow and arrow wearing tight-fit pink and black sci-fi body armor, I get an error. That happens because of the Qwen image edit text encode. When I remove the image input and then run the workflow again, it generates a perfect in-painted image. It actually works better than it does in Qwen image. So I thought, why not just make a separate workflow designed specifically for in-painting? That way you can keep your main workflow for general edits and then move over to the in-paint workflow for finer control. ComfyUI might come up with something smoother in the future, but for now, this solves the problem without adding another switch. So now we basically got 2 image edit workflows. Well, actually 3, with the next one we'll look at. But the idea is, you start your edit in the main workflow, and then move into the in-paint workflow when you need that really granular control. Let's quickly test this again. I'll take the image of the little boy, mask it, and give the prompt, boy in a Superman costume. You might have noticed that I'm using 12 steps here with the 8-step LoRa. That's because both multi-image editing and in-painting need a few extra steps to work properly. And like I said, the edit model does a better job at in-painting than the vanilla Qwen image model. This is next level. It gives you granular control, no changing faces you didn't want changed, no moving characters around, just pure clean edits. And speaking of clean edits, I found another workflow online and I simplified it as much as I could. What this workflow does is very similar to ControlNet in Paint, but instead of masks, it uses segmentation. It takes your image, segments exactly what you tell it to, and then changes only that part. This is something I'd use when I want really fine control. Let's say you want to change the color of just one item, or you want to swap out a gun for a banana without the hassle of manually masking it. That's what this is for. It's built out of 7 groups. The first is image upload. The second is load models, where again you load the Qwen edit model, your Lightning LoRa's, the text encoder, and the VAE. There are 2 extra models here as well, and we'll look at those properly when we get to segmentation. And just like before, if you're getting black images, switch Sage Attention to bypass. The next group is where you choose exactly what you want to segment. It could be hair, shoes, a yellow vase, anything. You type it in, and it finds and selects just that. Below that, you've got threshold, which controls how strong the segmentation is. Then there's expand mask, which tells it how much of the area around your selection you want included. And finally, there's rescale to megapixels, which is part of the upscale section of the workflow. After that comes the Qwen text encode and sampling group. I'm still using the 4-step LoRa, so my steps are set to 4 and CFG is at 1. Then comes the segmentation and masking group. This is where the 2 extra models come in. The first is the SAM2 large model, and the second is the grounding dyno model. I'll have both of these available for free on my Patreon. You'll also need an upscale model for the final output. I'm using 4x Ultra Sharp here because it's a good general purpose model. And the last group is the save group, which shows you the upscaled and stitched final image. Let's test it. I'll use this image of Keanu Reeves holding a gun. In the Choose Object to Segment node, I'll type gun. And in the prompt, I'll type change the gun into a banana. It selects the gun, segments it perfectly, and replaces just that part of the image with a banana. Looks brilliant. I'll make these workflows available for free on Patreon, so you can try them out yourself. Let's get the models downloaded and installed. I'll start with the new ones, then move on to the regular Qwen models. The download links are all on my Patreon page. First, download the SAM2 large model and place it in the Models SAM2 folder. Next, download Grounding Dyno and place it in the Models Grounding Dyno folder. You'll also need the configuration file, groundingdynoswinb.cfg.py, which must go into the same Models Grounding Dyno folder. Then, download the upscale model and place it in the Models Upscale folder. Next, we need the new ControlNet models for Qwen Image and Qwen Image Edit. These are the Qwen Image in Paint, Qwen Image Depth, and Qwen Image Canny models. Place all 3 into the Models Model Patches folder. What's left now are your regular Qwen models. The FP16 or BF16 diffusion models go into the Models Diffusion Models folder. The GGUF models go into the Models UNet folder. The Qwen Text Encoder goes into the Models Text Encoders folder. The VAEs go into the Models VAE folder. And the 2 Qwen Image Lightning LoRa's must go into the Models LoRa folder. I'll also have all of this written out clearly on Patreon, completely free. One last thing, make sure you update ComfyUI. Some of these nodes won't even show up if you're running an old version. Once you've updated, drag and drop the workflow into your workspace. You might see a lot of missing nodes at first. Don't panic, just click on the manager, select Install Missing Custom Nodes, tick all of them, click Install, and wait for it to finish. Then restart ComfyUI. After restarting, there might still be one extra node missing. That's the resolution master node. This one isn't in the ComfyUI Manager library. I'll leave a link on Patreon. Once you're on the GitHub page, click Copy to copy the repository link. Then come back to ComfyUI. Click Install via Git URL, paste the link into the pop-up that appears, and click OK. Wait for it to install, and you're done. The beauty of ComfyUI is that you can build almost anything you want. I watch videos of people saying Qwen isn't good, or comparing it to Banana, Google's new image edit model. But here's the thing, this is free, and it's being compared to closed source models. I'll take that win any day. Thanks for sticking with me all the way through. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment for the AI gods. This is Sneaky Robot. See you next time. Bye.